Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And our special guest this week in our Father's Day edition is Cal Ripken Jr. and his son, Ryan Ripken. Ryan, meet my son, Jeff. I don't think you know him yet.
Not yet, but nice to meet you, and I'm sure we're going to have quite a few stories to throw around here today.
Ryan, that's absolutely right. Now, Ryan and I may not have met, but since the beginning of our podcast, I gotta thank you. He's been so supportive of Is This a Great Game or What on social media, sending things out, replying to things. So, Ryan, I feel like we already do know each other as members of the media. We're always helping each other out.
Well, you know what? I agree with that, and to kind of to push the sentiment, why I love it is exactly why we're here, right? The stories that you guys talk about in the game of baseball. Look, we love baseball. We love what it brings. There's some other parts behind it on and off the field that I think is great. And I love what you guys are doing. And I'm so glad I get to join and join with Calvin as well.
Right. And our average height, by the way, for the Kurkjians is 5'5". The average height for the Ripkens is 6'5". So this is the greatest disparity in height between podcast fathers and sons. That's the way I see it.
It doesn't show up on the TV though. You look a lot taller than me right now.
So, Cal, with that being said, you know, we did some quick Googling, and by the way, if you Google Tim Kurkjian height, I think it says 5'2", Dad. So you're getting really slammed on the internet, by the way. But obviously, as great baseball players in yourselves, Cal, what was it like the first time your son Ryan was taller than you? When did that happen? And was he dunking on you at that time?
The answer to the dunking question is no. But he did break my nose one time when I knew him so well. I knew he was going to go right, so I just moved where he was going to go, and then he lifted his elbow up and hit me right in the nose. Blood went everywhere. Broke my nose for, I think, the 7th time. And I realized that was a little bit more serious than just playing with him as a kid. So he was a grown man at that time, and I had to protect myself.
Ryan, did he just put his nose back together like he always does, like it's no big deal? Is that what happened?
Well, if there was a few words and some emotion that was going out during that time. So did he end up putting the nose back together? Absolutely. How we get there was a process. And first off, you know, Dad, there was, you know, Tim, Jeff, you guys understand this. The phrase "you reach," you know, I teach. He didn't reach, but he stuck his head down there, and he might have guessed right. But you were in the danger zone, you know, and he's always been an intuitive guy. And I am a left-handed dominant player, and yeah, you know, he paid the price. But he didn't answer the question about the height. I probably was 19 years old, where I probably passed him. I grew about 1.5 inches after I left high school, so he didn't want to throw that part in there. But I'll tell you what, that was when I remembered being the taller Ripken in the family.
Right.
So,
you know, I played.
Ryan's in my father's big man. And so I was always kind of encouraging, you know, we'd get in the elevator and I'd stand up to him and I'd ask somebody in the elevator, and go, is he taller than me? And they'd look at me and say, nah, I think you got him still. But there was one moment where you're in the elevator and they go, Cal, I think he's got you. And there was a sense of pride that comes over, you know, I mean, I was bigger than my dad. No one knows for sure. There was no height in my family. I think my grandfather might have been 6'2". And so I passed my dad pretty early on, I think. But there's a certain pride that a son has when he passes your dad in many things. But I mean, in height, I thought that he'd always stand up straighter. I'd always try to stand up straighter. We'd ask people, is he taller than me or not? And that was just a game we used to play.
Right. I played basketball with Junior way too many times. I had the best time. And when I first started playing with him, he was a back-to-the-basket guy, was really good. Then he became a really good three-point shooter, like out of nowhere. Ryan, you were a great three-point shooter. When did you become a better three-point shooter than your father?
Oh, man.
He might have had more range than me, but I don't know if he was a better three-point shooter than me.
Here we go.
He could shoot from half court. I couldn't.
So as you all are probably aware, there are certain habits that my dad does possess. He can obsess over
No.
everything. No, I know it's a shock, right? He can obsess over everything, and it can be from playing cribbage, the card game, where, you got to keep playing until somebody wins, even though we had it set when we crossed from international waters back to the U.S., the game's over. Game's not over until he says it's over. But for basketball in this case, I remember watching my dad, and if something was bothering him, whether the shot wasn't being found after the game ended, he would go to a certain spot and practice the same thing over and over and over again. So when we got to competitions, I will say, didn't have the full confidence. Not that I didn't think that I could beat him, but I know that's his game. Oh, we're doing 10 shots in one location. Okay, that's advantage Cal there. But when we go, hey, we're going to back this up 25, 30 feet, advantage Ryan, because that was something that I had a specialty for letting it loose from deep.
So this is very self-serving, but this is one of the great compliments ever. Junior came to me after one of our games, and he said, show me how you do that move. And it was just like a little shake with my left hand, then you cross to the right hand. Little guys have to be able to make that move. They can't play if they don't. So I show it to him, and we play 3 days later, Ryan, and he's got the move perfected. Does that surprise you at all?
No. Not at all. I remember this is how crazy as it gets. Okay, this is not even basketball. There was this arcade video game online that took zero skill, Tim, zero skill. But my dad thought there was a skill. Do you remember though? We don't talk about the game, but
Mario Party, is that what you're referring to?
No. Mario Party was different. There was skill involved in Mario Party. That was different. There's two games. There was one game on the computer. That was a great game. Okay, great game. There was on the computer. All you'd have to do is press the space bar. It's all you have to do, and it was random what would happen. But if you want to guess what, Dad over there didn't think there's got to be some method to this. He came to the conclusion a good 24 to 48 hours later, okay, there's nothing you can change with this game. He looked at it from every single angle. Mario Kart, Dad, is what you're thinking of, where he would go upstairs and he would play the time trials where you would race yourself. And so I would come up there, and if I won the night before and I couldn't find him, this is when I was a kid, I'd go, where is he? And then I'd hear the finish line sound like, woo!
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. And then maybe he'd peek his head over. He's like, I wonder how that happened. Right. So it all makes sense. Right. And that's the funny thing, that as I've gotten older is, I've heard and I've seen the stuff that my dad's done off the field, but it's the same thing that actually made him great on it, was the obsessiveness on how do I continue to get this part of my game better? How do I figure it out, for the most important things in the game to the things that might not mean as much off the field? He was the same guy through and through.
Junior, your son just called you obsessive in like everything that you do. Is he correct about that?
Yes, I think he is. If you're going to do something, like Dad used to always say, if you're going to do something, you want to do it right. And so if I was going to do something, I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to get better at it. Even the examples of the video games, I wasn't a video game player. But when Ryan started playing the game, and it was Mario Party, Ryan, that was the dumb game. I remember Mario Kart. And I remember it's a racing game, and you could set your own time trials, and that's what became competitive with Ryan and I, is that I would erase his record on his own machine. But not doing it illegally, but actually beating him. And then he would actually spend a few minutes and then beat mine, and I'd have to come back and try to beat him. But it's all about trying to get better. And then you look at it, you analyze it, you kind of figure it out, and then try to apply whatever skills you have. How can I do it? How can I be successful doing that way? So I do have that sort of obsessive personality. And it really, in a sport like baseball, especially hitting, the amount of reps and the amount of monotony that you have to go through to keep your timing just right on the edge, and the routines you have to go through, you almost need that element to be successful, in sports. But I mean, especially I think in baseball and hitting, and trying to keep your mind right each and every game. And I always thought you have to know that there's always improvement. There's always something you can do. There's always something that you can control, that you can help things. And I guess I just approached that, and I'm sure I got that from my dad. I'm really analytical. I try to figure things out. But Dad was the one that opened up my mind to that. I mean, we'd be going down the street in a car, and he'd look over and see a piece of lumber hanging out of someone's trunk and has a red flag on it. And he would say, you know why they have that red flag on that piece of lumber? And I go, no. And he goes, it's just to warn the other drivers of the car that there's something sticking out the car. And the one that's really, really interesting to me was we went into a parking lot one time, and we looked up in the middle of the parking lot. The light poles were bent exactly in the same fashion, but they were bent. And he looks up and he goes, why do you think those poles are bent? And I go, I have no idea. And he didn't really know for sure, but he saw the groundskeeper guy cutting the grass. And he went over to him and says, do you take care of this property? He said, yeah. He said, do you do it during the wintertime too? He said, yeah. He said, so tell me about when you have to plow the snow. Where do you push the snow? And he goes, I push the snow right in the middle against those light towers. So in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, he figured out what was the cause of that. And so when you grow up listening to that sort of thing, you start, you have your own curiosity and you try to figure out things for yourself. And I hope that Ryan picked up on some of that, because I think he has that obsessive part of his personality too.
Right, Ryan, we brought up your grandfather a couple times. He's one of my favorite people of all time. He made me laugh so many times and he taught me so many lessons. He died when you were 5, but just tell us the Cal Sr. story that you remember as a little kid, something that he did around the house, on the field, anything.
Well, the cool thing now was when I got into pro baseball, at least, that every one of the guys that I grew up, loving the game or the history with the Orioles and, Jim Palmer, Eddie Murray, and then hearing from my dad and Bill and, all the stories now that you're older, and as you got a little bit older, you can hear different versions of the stories too. And so that was fun. But for me as a kid, and it didn't have anything to do with baseball. It was, we would go to Aberdeen, and every Christmas he would set up the train set. And I remember, it was the thing that I looked forward to the most when we went to Aberdeen, was that I was going to be able to see these trains. And then Senior, I called him Pop Pop. He would pick me up, put me on his lap, and we would just talk about the trains. Now, it's some things I think he might say something that to my dad's alluding to about maybe focusing on certain things. Probably I wasn't focusing as much as, wow, these trains are cool. But I just remember the little moment each time he picked me up and we would have that moment on the trains. And the one thing that, it makes me sad is I didn't have the experience of, the baseball side. But the cool thing, and this is why it was the full circle moment, Dad, I don't know if you remember this. We've had so many of these moments, so you probably do. But I remember we were on the field one day when I was a teenager, and we were going over certain drills. And then you smiled about something. And I said, because I was kind of frustrated with the drill. And you laughed and smiled because you said, I am having the same conversation that my dad had with me. So the impact with Senior was still there. And for me, those were really cool things I got to look back on. But yeah, the trains, that still goes through my mind till this day.
Well, Cal, I think it's really interesting you use the word curiosity, because in my childhood, growing up with my dad being a baseball writer and interviewing players, his lesson to me was always, be curious, ask those questions. If you have a question, just go up to the person, figure out the answer. And that is such an important instinct to have as a journalist and as a radio host and a podcast host. And now your son, Cal, is is a member of the media. And that's like the number one thing you need to have, is to be able to have that curiosity to be like, hey, why did you tie your shoes that way? Or, hey, why did you put your glove there instead of over here? How cool is it for you to have a son in media now after his great playing career? It's a little bit different, obviously, from your career, but it must be pretty neat to have him in media.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me to watch him develop in this space. You know, he's into it. He thinks about things. He's learning. Any kind of persons he runs into, he asks for their advice or from business advice. So he is curious, and it takes me back to the principle. When my dad was, when I was around a lot of players, and occasionally we would be around a big leaguer or Jim Palmer or something like that. And I went through a phase saying, I'm going to go get his autograph. And my dad said, instead of asking for an autograph, why don't you use that time to ask him a question? How do you hold your curveball? How do you hold your changeup? What's the control? And so that whole idea of asking questions. Now, a lot of people struggle with asking questions because sometimes it exposes that you don't know something. But the only way you learn about that is if you have to have the courage to ask the question. And I know that I was shy and more introverted, like in school and class or whatever else. There's a risk to answering a question because somebody might think of you a certain way. Ryan has this great skill. Like he had a social interaction with all his teachers. Like he could talk to adults as if like kids can talk to kids. And he really had that sort of rapport. And he never had the lack of confidence to say, I don't know this, explain that to me, or let me understand that a little bit better. And I think that's a really great thing. The story I told you about the bent poles in the thing, Dad immediately had to go to the source to try to figure out what that issue was. And so he was curious enough. And I think confirming that, a lot of times you might have a theory and you might figure out something, but sometimes there's only one or two players that actually know, or people that actually know, that you can go to. So, for example, Tony La Russa puts a hit and run on with Mark McGwire, and I'm sitting out there at shortstop thinking, what is that? Was that an intended hit and run play, or is that just he was stealing and Mark swung and he hit a ground ball to second base? So the people that know are the guy that was on first base, the hitter, Mark McGwire, the manager, or the third base coach. So I'd pick out one of the three. Normally I would go to La Russa, like the next day I go, since when are you putting hit and runs on with Mark McGwire? And then he would actually say, well, I do that because I don't really want Mark to try to hit a ground ball or something. I want him to swing. Sometimes he gets too take conscious, and I want him to swing. And so I confirmed my thought process, or I get to the bottom of it. So it's a valuable thing for me to know that's giving coverages on steals. So I know the next time Mark is up, and it could be the next series, it could be the next year. But as long as those guys are there, you have a little bit of information that you can go on to make a decision at second base. So Ryan has this great curiosity, and he is not shy at all by asking a question.
Dad, I want to ask Ryan, in my experience growing up in the business, so to speak, right? I was put in rooms with people that I definitely should not have been in a room in. I met Yogi Berra at the Hall of Fame, just a run-in, and you were kind of forced as a 10-year-old to carry yourself, ask a question, and be an adult in a room of very important adults. I'm sure you had experiences like that too that matured us at a very young age.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head on the sense where you were going to have some opportunities that for the majority of public wouldn't see themselves in, especially at that age. Right. And for me, I say this all the time that, Dad, I love you, but you gave me the wrong perception of how things are supposed to be. Right. I thought everyone's dad could be a baseball player. Everyone's dad is going to play for 20 years and can be an all-star and a Hall of Famer. And then you get older and you go, well, not everyone plays baseball. This game I knew it was hard, but it is even harder than I even envisioned and imagined as a 5 and 6 year old kid. And everything in between. But I grew up with that, just like you did. You grew up in that environment and atmosphere where that became the norm. So I remember still from a young age, Dad, I think you even told me, hey, these are just people. These are just friends, teammates, and that's how it would be. I remember when I'd walk in and be like, oh, hey, BJ Surhoff. Oh, hey, Brady. It wasn't the player. It was the person, and I think that's exactly what I assume that you figured out over time, and just being in those environments, right? You sit there, and maybe you have to be more mature, but it's just something you became accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
still
you,
how
you
I
don't,
know.
yeah, you don't realize it at the time, Ryan, because you think that's your norm that
Yeah.
you go through. And then in hindsight, looking back, in the first 14 years of my life, Dad was a minor league manager, so he ran everything, he taught everything, and I remember thinking, man, Dad's the encyclopedia of baseball, and you listen to every word he said. But then you could go to all these little books, specialty books, outfield play, infield play. You go to Doug DeSensei and ask him how he backhands that ball. So I mean, you had all these resources that you didn't realize at the time. But I'm certainly glad that I was around that and I could ask all those questions. But when you look back, you find out like I was really lucky to be in that environment to be able to learn from so many different professional players.
Right. Yeah. Rip, this is a little off topic, but tell us the story about your dad. And I think it was a gopher that got in the backyard and was eating all of his tomatoes and everything else. Tell us what he did.
So somehow, I mean, I don't know whether this is more stubborn or obsessive. I'm not sure. But Dad took great pride in his garden, and he grew some great things. I mean, his tomatoes were better than Earl's tomatoes.
Right.
The whole contest of Pat Stanarone growing tomatoes down the line in Memorial Stadium. Dad's tomatoes were the best, for sure. And he took great pride in his garden. And one time this groundhog or something got into his garden, and he was eating up his stuff, and he'd inspect it, and he'd kind of be a little mad at it. And one time he was going to put a stop to it. So the way he did at 11 o'clock at night, he poured himself a cup of coffee, he got himself a folding chair, and he took his shotgun out and sat in the middle of the garden and waited for the groundhog to show up. The groundhog didn't show up on the first night, and so he didn't get much sleep. The second night he didn't show up, but on the third night, roughly about 3 o'clock in the morning, you hear this loud boom. And he casually comes in, puts his coffee cup in the sink, and he said he won't be eating from my garden anymore. So the funny part about that, and the real interesting part about that is this is something that sounds like it happens on a farm, right? We lived in a neighborhood with quarter-acre lots. So we had neighbors on all sides of us, and it still happened in that neighborhood. So that's just who he was.
Right. So good. Ryan, so I'm sure your dad didn't get to see all of your games because he was a big leaguer at time, all that stuff. What was it like when you went home with him, just the two of you in the car? Because Junior always told me the best times ever were when it was him and his dad alone in the car talking baseball. What was it like for you when you went home after a game with your dad, whether you played really well or poorly, which is rare? What was that like?
Well, I definitely would, if the game went poorly, I didn't handle my emotions as well as a younger kid. So it was Dad trying to, try to be the philosopher and try to talk about like, hey, you'll get back at it tomorrow. And I'm like, well, screw this, like this, I'm terrible. And I did have to fight that a lot. I fought that my entire life, I'll be honest. But, as I got older and we had those moments, it was really cool. I think one of the cooler moments that I look back on was when Dad then joined the coaching staff at Gilman and in high school. So we were there and we're talking about maintenance and, we just talked about with Senior with the garden. I would consider with my dad, the garden for him would be the baseball field. So we're playing at Gilman. I'm coming down before practice or I'm going to go change. And who's out there raking the field, watering it? My dad, right? So the pride there. But those moments before the game, after the game, I thought were really special. And quite frankly, I think it's just as the older I got and the further I got into my professional career, those conversations could get even more technical and serious. So for me, I think it was just the evolution. And I still go back and I still like the one moment where I'm so glad he did it. And I hated it at the time was I was maybe 10 years old. And I think you had the packages of the games, Dad, and you're sitting at the kitchen table. And it was like the Rays Rangers or something, not even an Orioles game. And he goes, "Hey, Ryan, I want to show you something." And I'm like, "I just came down here to get ice cream. No, I'm not here to." He goes, "No, come sit right here." And he's got the notepad out. And I think it was even, we talked about, relays, cutoffs, relays, game situation. I think it was like the seventh inning of a 2 or 3 run game. And I remember I was so irritated because I was so hungry and I just wanted mint chocolate chip ice cream. Can a kid just have the ice cream? But it was one of those moments then where he explained it. And as you get a little bit older, I go, man, this is really cool. Right. So it was set there and it continues on to now. I mean, Dad, we still, with everything that happens in baseball, we'll sit there and go down a rabbit hole of the intricacies of the game. And I'm so grateful that I was able to learn that from him and from the family. That I can continue to that because it is really, really fun that we can have that special bond.
Can I interject for a minute? One of Dad's greatest gifts was he was a great teacher, of the game. But he had a really good way of doing it. He waited till you were calm and he was calm, so he could explain the intricacies of the game. But there were moments that when Brian was growing up, he would get out of control with it, and I was trying to figure out what my dad did that could calm him down. But in my case, it was my mom that would calm me down. She would say certain things, and so one of the more funny ones were he was swinging and hitting a certain way, and he was really young. And the next day, I got him down in the cage or whatever else, and I wanted to throw to him to say, "Try this and try that." And he was really young. Might have been too early for that. And he goes, "No, I'm not doing that." And I go, "What do you mean you're not doing that?" And he goes, "No." He said, "My coach doesn't want me to do that." And I was thinking, your coach now is a plumber. I said, "I'm a professional baseball player. My dad was the encyclopedia of baseball. I can help you." But it didn't matter at that time. I had to earn his confidence or whatever else through the way. And in many ways, that's like relationship between a coach and a player, is that you earn that trust and you earn that you do have the solutions and the answers that can help them.
I can only imagine on the reversal when Ryan would go to his coach and say, "Hey, my dad told me to swing this way." You know what the coach would say? "Yeah, okay, you should do that." I don't think he's going to say, "Well, I kind of think that you should." We're not going to argue with Cal Ripken Jr.
Right.
The last story that I had, this didn't have to do with that, but talking about of working together in the cage. We're both very technical people as well. We analyze the game, but sometimes our terminology can be a hair off. Usually it can be good. I remember one time, Dad, speaking of the cage, we were trying to work on something. I was trying to get a certain feel with where I was trying to get my hands to. And we were saying the same thing, but we didn't understand that it was the same thing. So we start barking at each other about this. And I go, "Hey, it should be here." And he goes, "No, that's where it should be, blah, blah, blah." And then it kind of got into maybe some other words were said. And then after a while, it was the realization of like, "Hey, we're in agreement. This is what we're trying to do." "Okay." And we're yelling like this. "All right." And then it goes, "Want to go get some breakfast and pancakes?" "Sure." And then we ended it that way. So we get all worked up over the game and in different ways, right? But it reminded me, and we sat down after that and going, "Hey, it's a good example where we go, even a wrong word choice or trying to figure it out. Not everything works for a certain player, So for us, that was the really cool thing is over all the years. And one thing that made my dad so great, as much as he knew the game, he's alluding to it, he always felt like he could learn something else to either teaching the game or when he played that could help you evolve. And that's really what I've taken into my life moving forward is you can always learn something different on the field and definitely off of it.
Junior, before we let Ryan go, we all got to go here for time restraint. Give me something that Ryan does, non-athletic, that you look at and go, God, he is really good at that. He's way better at that than I am. Give me something that, like a daily thing that he can do that even you can't do.
I'm sure there's a lot of those. I was always amazed when he was a kid. He had such a great memory, and socially, probably he does every single day. Is that I look at myself as more of an introvert, a little bit more like if I go into a room, I don't go mingling and talking to people, or I don't like to introduce myself. And fortunately, because of baseball and being recognized, that I don't have to do that. People tend to come and introduce themselves to me. But I'm amazed at socially how he moves freely, how he makes friends, how he understands and listens, and he remembers every conversation he's had with you. Even if he doesn't see you for a few months, and he just met him for the first time, he'll recant that conversation, and they'll pick up, right where they left off that time. I don't know where he got that from, but he's so comfortable with people. He's a good people person, but he does listen, he remembers, and he's perfectly comfortable in a whole crowd of people. And I guess extrovert, I'd call him an extrovert. Extroverts draw energy and attention, from being with people. I think I need to I'm stimulated so much when you were a baseball player and you were around people that a lot of times I want to go off and just be by myself. And so that's one of the things I appreciate is that Ryan is the people person, and he's comfortable in any environment with people.
All right, last one from me. If Jeffrey and I got into an arm wrestling contest, neither one of us would win. Okay, that's how bad we are. If we had an arm wrestling contest between Ryan and Cal Ripken right now, what's the result there? Your dad is like the farm strong, as Brady Anderson used to call him. He's farm strong. Could you beat him in an arm wrestling at this point?
I think from a pride sense, I would say yes. But every time we do something, I go, because he'll complain about be like, oh, I'm getting older. And I go, dude, why do you I feel like I should be able to take you down, but there is like this, it's dad strength, farm strength. So I can't, he's already got a big head, so I can't make it bigger, but it would be a good battle. I will say it'll be a good battle. I'd like to say pride wise, but I'll tell you what, I don't know what it is. I'll give you credit, Dad. You still got it. Now, maybe it's swimming those laps in the pool. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things Ryan and I will go out and play golf now, and I haven't played a whole lot of golf since I retired, but now I'm starting to get into it a little bit more. Ryan has this natural ability as a lefty, and one thing that bothers me a lot is that I used to be able to drive the ball further than most everybody, and now I can't. But it really hurts me when I think I hit a really good drive, and then Ryan comes up and then passes me by about 30 or 40 yards, and we're going up. And if you come over a hill, I'm sitting there thinking in the early days, like when he was 16, he was hitting it right up there close to me. And I go over the hill and I go, don't you even think that your ball's farther than my ball? And we go up and check, and thank goodness in the early days, mine was a little further than him. But now I know as soon as he hits it that he's going to win that contest.
Yeah, Dad, I would be embarrassed if the four of us played in a foursome at Bully Rock. You know how far we would be outdriven by the Ripkens? It would be a joke. If we played from the ladies' tees, Dad, they would outdrive us.
Hey, Jeffrey hit a ball. We played the other day. Jeffrey hit a ball 275 off the tee, okay? He's
Nice.
5'6.5". Hit one 275, 50 yards farther than I can possibly hit it at age 68 with an artificial hip. So don't put yourself down, Jeff. 275 is a pretty
That's
good
a bomb.
ball for a guy who's not very big.
That's
Hey,
a bomb.
in golf, you just where I get into trouble is where you have to connect with it, right? You connect with it right, you can outdrive. Don't look at us in this way, but now I'm sorry, I'm still fixated on the arm wrestling thing. You said with both of you, I kind of want to see this now. Enough about my dad and I. Now I'm really curious. Who would win between the two of you?
Jeffrey would win. He's got 20 pounds on me. He's younger. He's stronger. He's way better at everything than I am. And did I tell you I have an artificial hip? That's not helping things. Jeffrey would kill me in an arm wrestling, and so would everyone else.
Yeah, but at age 68, Ryan, he could still take me to the rack. Let me tell you. And he would beat he doesn't play much anymore. He just goes and shoots at his local gym. But if we played a serious one-on-one game to 11, unless I back him down every play, I think he's beating me because he's still quick off the step, just like he played with your dad all those years. And Cal, every time he talks about that, he always has to say this one saying, which is, I used to play basketball with Cal Ripken. Raging conflict of interest, by the way. It's always funny because he's covering the team and playing with you. And I say, Dad, it's been years. We're out of, you don't need to preface it anymore. But those days were so great for you guys.
Your dad traveled with an NBA ball. It had to be an NBA ball, and he could palm it. On the road, he had pickup games on the road. Obviously, we couldn't play. Although Brady Anderson and I played one time in a pickup game in an off day in San Francisco, which was a hoot. But we weren't allowed to play. But Tim used to carry his ball on the road with him.
Yeah, and Ryan, I'll leave this with you. When I used to play with your dad, we used to use my basketball all the time. Then I went like 10 years without playing with him, and I go to his gym. He takes the game ball, he tosses it to me, and he goes, "This feels just like your basketball." Meaning, he remembered that when we used to play, we would use my ball, and the ball they use now feels exactly like mine. I mean, is that the observant father that you grew up with?
Hey, he's saying, I don't know how Ryan remembers some of these conversations when he talks to people. Well, don't let him fool you here, So if he says he doesn't remember, I'd be careful because he remembers almost every of those little details. And the game of basketball, too, I've always loved that. One of the images of both of you, Tim and Dad, it's that one photo. People have asked me, Dad, if you're wearing jeans. Tim, I think you're I forget if you're going left or right. You know the photo I'm talking about, right?
I'm going left, yeah.
Yeah, going left. And that one just sticks out to me at all times. In my mind, I'm thinking, Tim, you put it up and you score and you beat him on that play.
No.
That's how I look at the image.
I know what happened. I beat your father off the dribble into the lane, and when I got to the rim, he swatted it about 30 rows up. That's what happened.
That's what happens to us little guys, because sometimes Cal Ripken will let you get by him because he knows he's a foot taller than you.
At 100 pounds more, and he can swat at 30 rows if he wants to. Oh, God. All right, listen, we got to go. You guys got to go back to work. Thank you so much on this Father's Day edition. Ryan Ripken, Cal Ripken, thank you for playing along with all this nonsense. It was hilarious.
Our pleasure, Timmy.